The paper bag split open before Natalie Turner even made it 10 feet from the grocery store entrance, sending oranges and cans rolling across the Manhattan sidewalk like a chaotic game of urban bowling. She stood there in her Armani coat and Laubautin in heels, staring down at the mess with a mixture of frustration and exhaustion that had nothing to do with the groceries. It was Wednesday afternoon, and she had exactly 47 minutes before her next board meeting. The healthy cooking experiment she'd planned for tonight was already looking like a lost cause. "Hold on, I've got this," a deep voice said from behind her. Before she could protest, a man was already crouching down, scooping up cans with practiced efficiency while simultaneously keeping a watchful eye on a little girl standing nearby. The girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wore a purple backpack covered in unicorn stickers and clutched a well-loved stuffed elephant. "Daddy, we're going to be late for the library," the girl said, bouncing on her toes. "I know, sweetie, but this lady needs help. Remember what we talked about. Being kind even when we're busy." He looked up at Natalie with warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. His dark hair needed a trim, and his jacket had seen better days, but his smile was genuine. "You've got another bag in there." Natalie fumbled with the reusable tote she'd been carrying, still processing the kindness. In her world, people didn't just stop to help strangers. They barely made eye contact. "Yes, thank you. I can manage, though." "I'm sure you can," he said, already transferring items into her tote with careful hands, "but you don't have to." He noticed her designer shoes and quickly stepped back. "Sorry, I don't mean to overstep." "No, you're not. I'm just not used to." She trailed off, realizing how pathetic that sounded. Not used to what? Basic human decency? She cleared her throat. "Thank you, really." The little girl had joined in, carefully collecting the oranges. "These ones aren't bruised too bad," she announced, inspecting each piece of fruit with the seriousness of a seasoned produce manager. "My daddy says you should always check for soft spots." "Your daddy sounds very wise," Natalie said, surprising herself with the warmth in her voice. She'd been around children exactly 3 times in the last year, all at mandatory corporate charity events where she'd smiled for photos and written checks. "I'm Emma," the girl announced. "This is my daddy, Will." His name is William, but everyone calls him Will except his boss, who calls him Wilson because that's his last name. Wilson Edwards. "Emma, you don't have to tell the nice lady our whole life story," Will said, but he was laughing. He stood up, now holding her salvaged groceries. "Where are you headed? These are getting heavy." Natalie checked her watch. 39 minutes now, just a few blocks, but I don't want to make you late." "The library isn't going anywhere," Will said. "Besides, that bag already broke once. Let's make sure you actually get home with your food." They fell into step together, Emma skipping between them. The early October air had that crisp quality that made the city feel almost livable. Natalie found herself slowing down, matching their pace instead of her usual purposeful stride that could cut through tourist crowds like a hot knife through butter. "So what's at the library?" Natalie asked Emma, genuinely curious. "Story time. Miss Jennifer reads chapter books on Wednesdays." "We're in the middle of Charlotte's Web, and it's so good but also so sad because I know what's going to happen because I saw the movie, but Daddy says the book is better." Emma said this all in one breath. "The book is always better," Natalie agreed. "See, Daddy, I told you everyone knows that." Emma beamed up at Will, who rolled his eyes affectionately. "You win this round, kiddo." They walked another block, and Natalie realized she was enjoying this. The simple act of walking with another person, having a conversation that wasn't about quarterly earnings or market share. When was the last time she'd done something this normal? "I'm Natalie, by the way," she said. "I realized I never introduced myself." "Nice to meet you, Natalie," Will said. His voice had a roughness to it, like gravel under smooth water. "That building there." They'd reached her apartment building, the doorman already stepping forward with his practiced smile. "Miss Turner, do you need assistance?" "I've got it, Marcus, thank you." She turned to Will and Emma. "Thank you both. You saved my dinner plans." "What are you making?" Emma asked. "I was thinking pasta with fresh vegetables. I've been eating too much takeout lately." "We have spaghetti on Fridays," Emma announced. "It's tradition, with meatballs." Will shifted the groceries, looking slightly embarrassed by his daughter's chattiness. "We should let you go. Come on, Em." But Natalie found herself not wanting them to leave. Not yet. "Would you like to come up? I have cookies. Store-bought, I'm afraid, but they're good." The words tumbled out before she could second-guess them. Will hesitated, clearly torn between politeness and something else. Probably thought she was some kind of weirdo inviting strangers to her apartment. She was about to take it back when Emma grabbed her father's hand. "Can we, Daddy? We have time before story time, right?" "I promise I'm not a serial killer," Natalie added. "Marcus here can vouch for me. I've lived in this building for 3 years and haven't murdered anyone yet." Marcus, bless him, didn't even blink. "Miss Turner is an excellent tenant, very quiet." Will laughed, and the sound did something strange to Natalie's chest. "All right, but just for a few minutes. We really do have to get to the library." The elevator ride up to the 15th floor was quiet except for Emma's humming. Natalie caught Will's reflection in the polished doors. He was looking around with the careful observation of someone cataloging details, but not in a judgmental way. More like an artist studying a painting. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, immaculate, professionally decorated, and utterly impersonal. She saw it now through their eyes. The pristine white furniture, the abstract art that cost more than most people's cars, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. It looked like a hotel suite. "Wow," Emma breathed. "You can see the whole park." "Pretty much," Natalie said, setting her groceries on the marble kitchen counter. "Sometimes I watch the hot air balloons in the summer." Will placed the salvaged bag next to hers, his movements careful in the space. He looked out of place here with his worn jacket and scuffed work boots. But not uncomfortable, just different. "This is beautiful," he said quietly. "You must love coming home to this view." The honest answer was that she barely noticed it anymore. "It's nice," she said instead. "Let me get those cookies." She rummaged through her pantry, finding the package of chocolate chip cookies her assistant had ordered last week. She wasn't even sure why she'd asked for them. She didn't eat cookies. But right now, she was grateful for them. Emma settled at the kitchen island, swinging her legs, while Will stood near the windows. Natalie poured milk into glasses, feeling strangely domestic. When was the last time she'd served anyone anything in this apartment that wasn't catered? "These are really good," Emma said seriously, studying her cookie before taking another bite. "Thank you, Miss Natalie. Just Natalie is fine." She sat across from Emma, watching the girl eat with the unself-conscious joy of childhood. "So, Charlotte's Web, what's your favorite part so far?" Emma launched into an animated description of the story, complete with hand gestures and voices for different characters. Will joined them at the island, one protective hand resting on the back of Emma's chair. He was completely focused on his daughter, and Natalie found herself watching the interaction with something like hunger. "Daddy cries at the end," Emma stage whispered. "Every time." "It's a sad book," Will defended himself, but his ears were slightly red. "It's beautiful, though," Natalie said. "I haven't read it since I was probably Emma's age. You should read it again," Emma decided. "Books are better when you're older because you understand more things." Natalie laughed. "You know what? You're absolutely right." They stayed for 20 minutes, talking easily about books and the city, and nothing consequential. Will mentioned working construction, managing renovation projects across Manhattan. Emma chattered about school and her best friend Sophie and how she wanted a dog, but their apartment didn't allow pets. When they finally had to leave for the library, Natalie walked them to the door, surprised by her reluctance to see them go. "Thank you again," she said, "for everything." "Thanks for the cookies," Emma said, hugging her stuffed elephant. "And for being nice." After they left, Natalie's apartment felt even emptier than before. She stood at her windows, looking out at the park. thinking about warm brown eyes and genuine smiles and a little girl who thought books were better when you were older. She couldn't remember the last time she'd connected with someone so easily. Her days were filled with people, but they were all transactional relationships. Employees, business partners, investors, everyone wanted something. Will and Emma hadn't wanted anything except to be kind. Natalie spent the evening cooking her pasta, eating it alone at her dining table while reviewing contracts on her tablet. But her mind kept drifting back to that conversation, to the way Will had looked at his daughter with such pure love, to Emma's unself-conscious joy. She went to bed that night thinking about Charlotte's Web and whether the library near her office had a copy. 2 weeks passed. Natalie found herself walking past that grocery store more often than necessary, though she wouldn't admit why even to herself. She'd bought Charlotte's Web and read it in 2 nights, crying at the ending just like Will had admitted to doing. She'd even found herself smiling at strangers on the street, which her assistant had noticed with concern. "Are you feeling all right, Miss Turner?" Rebecca had asked after Natalie had complimented her new haircut. "I'm fine. Why? You've just been different lately. Happier." Happier. What a concept. Natalie wasn't unhappy exactly. She'd worked hard for everything she had, building Turner Enterprises from a small marketing firm into a multi-million-dollar consulting company. At 32, she was one of the youngest female CEOs in the city. She had success, respect, and enough money to never worry about anything practical. But happy? She wasn't sure she'd thought about happiness in years. It was a Saturday afternoon when she saw them again. She'd decided to walk to the farmers' market in Union Square, something she normally never had time for. The fall weather was perfect, that sweet spot before the city turned bitter and gray. She was examining apples when she heard that bright, familiar voice. "Daddy, look. They have the honey you like." Natalie turned, and there they were. Will was crouched down at a honey vendor's table, Emma pointing excitedly at different jars. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, and Natalie's heart did something complicated in her chest. She should walk away. It would be weird to approach them. They'd had one brief encounter. He probably didn't even remember her, but Emma spotted her before she could make up her mind. "Natalie," the girl waved enthusiastically, and suddenly they were face to face again. "Hi," Natalie said, feeling strangely nervous. "Fancy meeting you here. We come every Saturday," Emma announced. "Daddy says the vegetables are fresher and it's important to support local farmers." Will stood, and his smile was warm and surprised. "Hey, how's it going? Did you ever make that pasta?" "I did, actually. It was good." She found herself smiling back. "How was Charlotte's Web?" "So sad," Emma said dramatically. "I cried and cried, but it was beautiful just like you said." "I reread it," Natalie admitted. "You were right. It's better when you're older." "See," Emma looked triumphantly at her father. "I told you." They stood there for a moment, people flowing around them in the crowded market. Will had a canvas bag slung over one shoulder, already partially filled with vegetables. He looked good, Natalie thought, comfortable in his own skin in a way that people in her world rarely were. "Are you here alone?" Will asked. "Just me. I thought I'd try this whole fresh food thing more regularly." "It's the best place for produce," he said. "Have you been to the bread stand yet? They do this sourdough that's incredible." "Show me." They fell into step together naturally, Emma between them again. Will guided them through the market with the confidence of a regular, pointing out his favorite vendors. He talked about how he'd started coming here when Emma was a baby, how it had become their Saturday ritual. "I wanted her to understand where food comes from," he explained, selecting tomatoes with a practiced eye. "That it doesn't just appear in grocery stores." "That's really thoughtful," Natalie said. In her world, food appeared on conference room tables or was delivered by apps. She hadn't thought about its origins in years. Emma tugged on her hand when had the girl taken her hand, pulling her toward a stand with fresh flowers. "Can we get some for the apartment, Daddy? They're so pretty." "We can get a small bunch," Will said, and Emma immediately began debating between sunflowers and daisies. "Get both," Natalie suggested. You can never have too many flowers. They're kind of expensive, Emma said seriously, looking at the prices. Will's jaw tightened slightly, and Natalie realized her mistake. But sunflowers last longer, she added quickly. They're the smarter choice. Emma nodded sagely and selected a bunch of bright yellow sunflowers. Will paid the vendor, and Natalie pretended to be very interested in some zinnias while fighting the urge to buy out the entire stand for them. They continued through the market, and Natalie found herself actually enjoying shopping for the first time in forever. Will explained how to pick the best produce, shared recipes he liked, talked about meal planning on a budget. Emma asked Natalie questions about everything: what she did for work, where she grew up, whether she had any pets. I work with companies to help them grow, Natalie explained. Like if a business wants to expand or needs help with marketing, they hire my company. So you're like a business doctor, Emma said. Natalie laughed. That's actually a perfect description. And no pets. No, I work a lot. It wouldn't be fair to an animal. Everyone should have a pet, Emma said with the certainty of a 6-year-old. They make you happy even when you're sad. Emma's very wise, Will said. Unfortunately, wisdom doesn't change apartment rules. Someday though, right, Daddy? Someday, he agreed, and Natalie heard the promise in his voice. The certainty that he would find a way to give his daughter what she wanted. They reached the bread stand, and Will bought a loaf of sourdough, insisting Natalie try a sample. It was incredible, crusty and tangy and still slightly warm. Okay, you were right, she admitted. That's amazing. Told you. He looked pleased with himself. How do you know so much about food? She asked as they walked. My mom, he said. She was an amazing cook. Taught me that good food doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. It just has to be made with care. His voice went soft. She passed when I was 22, right before Emma was born. I'm sorry, Natalie said, and meant it. She would have loved being a grandmother. He looked down at Emma, who was humming to herself while examining her sunflowers. I try to teach Emma the things she would have taught her. What about Emma's mom? Natalie asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's too personal. No, it's okay. Will guided them toward a bench at the edge of the market, setting down his bags. Sarah, we were high school sweethearts. Got married young, had Emma, and I thought we'd figured it all out. He was quiet for a moment. She left when Emma was 2, said she wasn't ready for the family life. Last I heard, she was living in California with some tech entrepreneur. She sends a card on Emma's birthday, but that's it. I'm sorry, Natalie said again, inadequately. Don't be. It hurt like hell at the time, but honestly, Emma and I are good, better than good. We're a team. He watched his daughter, who was showing her sunflowers to a passing dog. I wouldn't change anything because it would mean changing her. Natalie felt something shift in her chest. She'd never heard anyone talk about parenthood like that, with such uncomplicated love and devotion. In her world, children were scheduled between meetings and raised by nanas. The few parents she knew seemed to view their kids as accessories or obligations. You're a good dad, she said softly. Will looked at her, really looked at her, and his smile was gentle. I try, she makes it easy. They sat there for a while, watching Emma charm everyone who passed. The girl had inherited her father's warmth, Natalie thought, that genuine kindness that seemed so rare. What about you? Will asked. What's your story? My story is boring, Natalie said automatically. I doubt that. She considered how much to share. Usually, she kept her personal life completely separate from everything else. But something about Will made her want to open up. Only child. Parents were both lawyers, very focused on success. I was expected to excel at everything, and I did. She shrugged. Went to Harvard for business, started my company at 25, built it up. That's pretty much it. That doesn't sound boring. That sounds impressive. It sounds lonely when you say it out loud. The admission surprised her. She'd never said that before, never even really thought it. But it was true. Her life was impressive on paper and hollow in practice. Will didn't offer platitudes or try to minimize it. He just nodded. I get that. Different circumstances, but I get it. After Sarah left, I was so focused on just surviving working, taking care of Emma, keeping everything together that I forgot to actually live. He paused. Emma reminded me, kids are good at that, pulling you back into the moment. She seems really special. She is. Pride colored his voice. She's smarter than me, for sure, and kinder. I don't know where she gets it. She gets it from you, Natalie said. The kindness. You stopped to help a stranger with her groceries. Anyone would have done that. In this city, no, they really wouldn't have. Emma bounded back to them, chattering about the dog she'd met. They stayed at the market for another hour, and Natalie couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a Saturday this much. Usually, weekends meant catching up on work in her home office, maybe a charity gala or business dinner. When they finally left, walking back toward the subway station together, Natalie found herself not wanting the day to end. Hey, Will said, stopping before the subway entrance. This might be forward, but Emma and I were going to get pizza. Would you want to join us? Emma grabbed Natalie's hand. Please, we always get pizza on Saturdays after the market. It's the best pizza in the whole city. Natalie had 3 proposals to review and a conference call scheduled with Tokyo in 2 hours. She should say no. She absolutely should say no. I'd love to, she heard herself say. The pizza place was tiny, wedged between a bodega and a dry cleaner, with 6 tables and walls covered in faded photos of old New York. It smelled like garlic and oregano and melted cheese, and Natalie loved it immediately. They squeezed into a corner booth, Emma sliding in next to her father. The menu was simple pizza, salad, soda. No craft cocktails or wine lists or prefix options. 2 slices of pepperoni, 1 cheese, Will asked Emma, who nodded enthusiastically. He looked at Natalie. What do you like? I haven't had pizza in probably 2 years, she admitted. 2 years. Emma looked horrified. How is that possible? I eat a lot of salads. That's so sad, Emma said with complete sincerity, and both adults laughed. Get whatever you want, Will said. My treat, to thank you for the cookies. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. They ordered pepperoni for Will and Emma to share, margarita for Natalie because she couldn't quite bring herself to go full pepperoni on her first pizza in years. While they waited, Emma pulled out a coloring book and crayons from her backpack. I always bring something to do, she explained. Daddy says it's important to be prepared. Smart, Natalie said. What are you coloring? Unicorns. Want to help? And that was how Natalie Turner, CEO of Turner Enterprises, found herself coloring unicorns in a tiny pizza shop on a Saturday afternoon. She couldn't remember the last time she'd colored. Grade school, maybe? That one's really good, Emma said, pointing to the unicorn Natalie had carefully shaded in purple and blue. You're a good colorer. Thank you, you too. Will watched them with an expression Natalie couldn't quite read. When their pizza arrived, Emma carefully put away her crayons, and they ate like they'd been doing this forever. The pizza was incredible thin crust, fresh mozzarella, basil that tasted like summer. Okay, this is amazing, Natalie admitted. Told you, Emma said, tomato sauce on her chin. They talked about everything and nothing. Will told stories about construction disasters that had Emma giggling. Natalie shared carefully edited tales from the corporate world, making board meetings sound more interesting than they were. Emma discussed her friend Sophie's birthday party next week and how she was going to give her a book because books were the best presents. The afternoon stretched into evening. Other customers came and went. The owner, an older Italian man named Marco, stopped by their table to chat with Will about a renovation project. He winked at Natalie when Will introduced her, and she felt herself blushing. Finally, they had to leave. Emma was starting to droop, the long day catching up with her. Thank you for today, Natalie said as they stood outside the restaurant. The city lights were coming on, that magical twilight moment when Manhattan shifted from day to night. I had a really good time. So did we, Will said. Emma had wrapped herself around his leg, half asleep. We should do it again, if you want. I'd like that. They exchanged numbers, and Natalie felt like a teenager, excited and nervous and hopeful. As she watched them head toward the subway, while carrying a drowsy Emma, she realized something had fundamentally shifted in her world. She walked home the long way, thinking about pizza and farmers' markets and coloring books. Thinking about Will's warm laugh and Emma's unbridled joy and what it might mean to let people in. Her assistant would have said she was having a midlife crisis, but Natalie was only 32. This wasn't a crisis. It was more like an awakening. The next week passed in a blur of meetings and contracts and the usual controlled chaos of running a company, but everything felt different now. Natalie found herself rushing through work to be done by evening. She started leaving her office at 6 instead of 9, ignoring the shocked looks from her employees. She texted with Will throughout the week. Nothing heavy, just little updates about their days. He sent her a photo of Emma's school project, a diorama of the solar system made from painted styrofoam balls. She sent him a picture of her sad desk lunch with the caption, "Someone please stage an intervention." His response, "Meet me for a real lunch tomorrow. I know a place." They met at a food truck near his current construction site. Will was covered in dust, his jeans worn and his boots scuffed, and Natalie thought he looked more attractive than any of the men in expensive suits she usually dealt with. "This is not what I expected," she said, looking at the food truck, a bright yellow vehicle with Maria's authentic Mexican painted on the side. "Trust me," Will said. "Best tacos in the city." He was right. They ate sitting on a concrete barrier at a construction site, watching workers move back and forth with purpose. Will explained what they were doing, gutting an old office building to turn it into apartments. "I love this part," he said, gesturing at the organized chaos. Taking something old and making it new again, finding the bones of a building and respecting them while creating something better. "You really love what you do," Natalie observed. "I do. It's good work, honest work." He took another bite of his taco. "I know it's not glamorous. It's more honest than what I do. I push money around and tell people how to push their money around. You create actual things, places where people will live and work. Never thought about it that way." They sat there for a while, comfortable in the silence. Natalie realized this was what had been missing from her life, these simple moments of connection. No agenda, no transaction, just being. "Emma asks about you," Will said suddenly. "Every day. When are we going to see Natalie again? I think you made a fan. The feeling is mutual. She's an incredible kid. She thinks you're like a princess from a book, beautiful and powerful and living in a castle." Natalie laughed, but something warm settled in her chest. "Tell her princesses are overrated, and my apartment isn't a castle. Could have fooled me." "Want to come over for dinner this week?" The invitation came out before she could overthink it. "I've been practicing my cooking. I promise it will be edible." "You sure? We don't want to impose." "You're not imposing, I'm inviting." She met his eyes. "I'd really like to see you both again." His smile was slow and genuine. "Then we'd love to." They settled on Friday evening. Natalie spent the rest of the week in a state of nervous anticipation she hadn't felt in years. She left work early on Friday, stopping at the farmer's market for ingredients. She decided to make the pasta dish again, but better this time. She bought fresh pasta, vegetables, herbs, and on impulse, ingredients for chocolate chip cookies. Her apartment had never felt so empty as it did while she waited for them to arrive. She'd cleaned obsessively, even though the cleaning service had been there yesterday. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater, casual, but not too casual. When the doorbell rang at 6:30, her heart jumped. Emma burst through the door the moment Natalie opened it, carrying a drawing. "I made this for you." It was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall with yellow hair, one medium with brown hair, one small with what appeared to be pigtails. They were standing in front of a building with lots of windows, holding hands. Above them, Emma had written "My friends" in careful, slightly crooked letters. "This is beautiful," Natalie said, and her voice caught slightly. "Thank you, Emma." "That's you, that's Daddy, and that's me." Emma explained, pointing to each figure. "In front of your castle." "I love it. I'm going to put it on my refrigerator." Will stood in the doorway, holding a bottle of wine and looking slightly nervous himself. He wore dark jeans and a button-down shirt, and Natalie's stomach did a little flip. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey yourself. Come in." Emma immediately ran to the windows, pressing her face against the glass. "Daddy, look. The lights are all coming on. It's like stars." While Emma explored, Natalie and Will moved into the kitchen. She was suddenly very aware of how close he was, how good he smelled like soap and something woodsy. "Can I help with anything?" he asked. "You can open that wine. Glasses are in the cabinet above the sink." They moved around each other easily, and Natalie was surprised by how natural it felt to have someone in her space. She usually guarded her privacy fiercely, but with Will, it was different. "So I've been practicing," she said, pulling out her ingredients. "Fair warning, this might be a disaster." "I doubt that. You seem like the type who's good at everything she tries." "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" "Definitely a compliment." He handed her a glass of wine, their fingers brushing. "You're pretty remarkable, Natalie Turner." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I literally split open a grocery bag and dropped food all over the sidewalk. And then invited 2 strangers into your home and treated my daughter with genuine kindness." His voice was serious now. "Do you know how rare that is? Most people see a single dad with a kid and make assumptions." "They don't see us, you saw us." "You made it easy," she said softly. Emma's voice interrupted the moment. "Can I help cook, please?" "Absolutely," Natalie said. "Come here, Chef Emma." They cooked together, Emma standing on a stool to reach the counter, while prepping vegetables with the efficiency of someone who'd made thousands of meals. Natalie followed the recipe she'd practiced twice this week, and somehow, with them there, it felt less like a performance and more like fun. Emma chattered constantly, asking questions about everything. "Why do onions make you cry? Where does pasta come from? Can you really get cheese from a cow?" Will answered patiently, turning each question into a mini lesson, and Natalie found herself learning too. Dinner was actually good. The pasta was perfectly al dente, the vegetables roasted with garlic and olive oil, and the fresh bread Will had brought from the market completed the meal. They ate at her dining table, which had never felt less formal. Emma sat on her knees to reach better, and Will told stories about construction mishaps that had them all laughing. After dinner, while Will helped clean up despite Natalie's protests, Emma discovered her bookshelf. "You have so many books," the girl exclaimed. "Have you read them all?" "Most of them," Natalie admitted, joining her. The bookshelf was the one personal thing in her apartment floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with everything from business books to novels to poetry collections she'd accumulated over the years. "Can you read to me?" "Emma," Will called from the kitchen. "Don't impose." "She's not," Natalie said. "I'd love to. What do you want to hear?" Emma selected a picture book version of The Velveteen Rabbit, and they settled on the couch together. Will finished in the kitchen and joined them, sitting close enough that Natalie could feel his warmth. She read, and Emma snuggled against her side, and Will's hand somehow ended up resting on the couch behind her shoulders. It felt like family, like home. And that terrified and thrilled Natalie in equal measure. Emma fell asleep before the story ended, curled up with her head in Natalie's lap. Will looked at his daughter with that familiar expression of pure love, then at Natalie with something else. Something that made her breath catch. "I should get her home," he whispered. "You could stay," Natalie heard herself say. "I have a guest room. It's late and she's so comfortable." Will studied her face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He carefully lifted Emma, who mumbled something about rabbits but didn't wake. Natalie led them to her guest room, which was pristine and unused. While Will settled Emma on the bed, removing her shoes and covering her with the blanket, Natalie found herself watching from the doorway. This man, she thought. This kind, devoted, genuine man who worked with his hands and raised his daughter alone and stopped to help strangers. When had she ever met anyone like him? They left the door cracked and returned to the living room. Suddenly alone, the air felt charged with possibility. They sat on the couch, close but not touching. "Thank you for tonight," Will said. "For all of this. Thank you for coming. For letting me be part of your evening. Natalie." He turned to face her fully. "Can I ask you something? Anything?" "What are we doing here?" The question hung between them. Natalie knew what he was really asking. She'd been asking herself the same thing all week. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know that I haven't felt this happy in years, maybe ever, and it's because of you, both of you. I'm a construction worker with a 6-year-old daughter and about $300 in savings after bills. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. You're a millionaire CEO who lives in a penthouse overlooking Central Park." His voice wasn't bitter, just honest. "We're from different worlds. Maybe I'm tired of my world." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Maybe your world is better. My world is complicated. Emma comes first, always. I wouldn't want it any other way." He looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. "I like you, Natalie. A lot. But I need to know this is real. I can't let Emma get attached to someone who's just going to leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Natalie said, and as she said it, she knew it was true. "I'm falling for you, Will, both of you. It terrifies me and it's probably crazy and I don't care." Yeah, he smiled then, really smiled, and leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips met hers softly, tentatively, and Natalie felt something inside her chest crack open. The kiss was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Will rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling for you too," he whispered. "Have been since you stood there on that sidewalk looking lost and beautiful and completely out of your element." "I was completely out of my element. You're doing better now." They stayed up talking for hours, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Will told her about losing his mother, about Sarah leaving, about the terror and joy of raising Emma alone. Natalie opened up about her lonely childhood, her parents' expectations, the way she'd built success as a shield against connection. "I've been so focused on achieving," she said, curled against his side. "On proving I was worth something, I forgot to figure out what I actually wanted." "What do you want?" he asked. "This," she said simply. "You, Emma, a life that means something beyond quarterly earnings and market share. We come as a package deal. Me and Emma, that's not going to change." "Good. I wouldn't want it any other way." The sun was starting to rise when Will finally stood to leave. Emma was still asleep, and they decided to let her rest a little longer. In the doorway, Will kissed her again, longer this time, deeper. "See you soon," he murmured against her lips. "How about today? After Emma wakes up, we could go to the park, have breakfast. I don't have any plans." "You're taking a whole weekend off. First time for everything." He laughed and kissed her once more before going back to check on Emma. Natalie stood at her windows, watching the city wake up, feeling like she was waking up too. The next few weeks were a blur of new experiences and deepening feelings. Natalie cut her work hours significantly, delegating more to her excellent team who seemed both shocked and pleased to have actual responsibilities. She met Will for lunch whenever she could. She helped Emma with homework in the evenings. She learned to cook new recipes, went to story time at the library, spent Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Her friends, the few she had, were bewildered. "You're dating a construction worker," Jessica from the country club had said, her tone making it sound like Natalie had announced she was joining a cult. "He's a construction manager," Natalie had corrected. "And yes, I'm happy." "But what do you have in common?" Everything that matters, Natalie had thought but didn't say. Instead, she just smiled and changed the subject. Emma had accepted Natalie's presence in their lives with the easy adaptability of children. She started calling her Natty and insisted she come to every school event. Will was more cautious, always making sure Emma wasn't getting too attached too fast, but Natalie could see him relaxing as the weeks passed. They hadn't told Emma they were dating, not officially. They were careful about physical affection around her, keeping things age-appropriate. But Emma was smart. She started drawing pictures of the three of them together. She asked when Natalie was coming over for dinner. She held both their hands when they walked. "I think she knows," Natalie said one evening. They were at Will's apartment, a cozy one-bedroom where Emma slept in the actual bedroom and Will took the pull-out couch. It was a fraction of the size of Natalie's place, filled with second-hand furniture and Emma's artwork and photos on every surface. Natalie loved it. "She definitely knows," Will agreed. They were sitting on his small balcony, Emma asleep inside, sharing a beer and watching the city lights. "She asked me yesterday if you were my girlfriend." "What did you say?" I asked her what she thought. "She said yes, obviously, because we smile at each other a lot and we hold hands when we think she's not looking." He grinned. "Kid doesn't miss anything." "Is she okay with it?" she said, and I quote, "Good, because Natalie is the best and I want her to stay forever." Natalie's eyes stung. "Forever is a long time." "Too long?" Will asked quietly. "Not long enough." He kissed her then, and Natalie thought about forever. About this man and his daughter and the life they were building together. It had only been 6 weeks, which was crazy, too fast, reckless. And yet it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The first real test came in November. Emma had a school play, and Natalie had promised to be there. But the day of the performance, a major client crisis erupted. Her CFO called an emergency meeting. Her lawyer said she needed to be there. Natalie looked at her calendar, at the note she'd written in bright red marker. Emma's play. 2 p.m., do not miss. She thought about the little girl who'd accepted her so completely, who drew pictures of them as a family, who'd asked her to help practice her lines every evening for the past 2 weeks. She thought about Will, who'd arranged to leave work early so he could be there. Who never missed a single event in Emma's life, no matter what. She thought about who she wanted to be. "Handle it," she told her CFO. "You have my full authority to make whatever decisions necessary. I have somewhere I need to be." "But Natalie, I trust you. That's why I hired you." She grabbed her coat. "I'll check in tonight, but you've got this." She made it to the school with 5 minutes to spare. Will was saving her a seat in the crowded auditorium, and the relief on his face when he saw her made her chest tight. "You came," he said. "Of course I came, I promised." He took her hand, right there in front of everyone, and didn't let go. The play was a chaotic elementary school production of The Wizard of Oz. Emma played a munchkin, one of 20 kids dressed in similar costumes, and she had exactly 2 lines. But when her moment came, when she stepped forward and spoke clearly into the too loud microphone, Natalie felt prouder than she had at any business achievement. Afterward, Emma ran to them, costume askew and makeup smeared, and threw her arms around both of them. "Did you see me? Did I do good?" "You were perfect," Natalie said, kneeling down to hug her properly. "An absolute star. You came," Emma whispered into her ear. "You really came." "I'll always come," Natalie promised. "When you need me, I'll be here." That night, after ice cream to celebrate and bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, Will walked Natalie out to get a cab. "Thank you," he said. "For today, I know you had work stuff." Emma is more important than work stuff. Not everyone would make that choice. "Then not everyone deserves you both." She kissed him softly. "I mean what I said to her. When she needs me, I'll be there. When you need me, I'll be there." "I need you right now," he said, pulling her closer. "I need you all the time. Is that too much?" "It's exactly right." November turned to December. The city transformed for the holidays, lights and decorations everywhere, that peculiar magic that makes even cynical New Yorkers smile. Natalie had always found the holidays stressful obligatory parties, meaningless gift exchanges, her parents' annual critique of her life choices. But this year was different. This year, she had Will and Emma. They went to the Rockefeller Center tree lighting, Emma on Will's shoulders, Natalie pressed against his side in the crowd. They ice skated at Bryant Park, Natalie wobbly and laughing, while Emma, who'd been taking lessons, skated circles around them. They made cookies, decorating them with Emma's enthusiastic hand that resulted in more frosting than cookie. Natalie's parents invited her to their annual Christmas party in Connecticut, a formal affair full of lawyers and judges, and the kind of people who measured worth in titles and bank accounts. Natalie had gone every year since college, endured the parade of suitable men her mother tried to set her up with, smiled through the pointed questions about when she'd settle down. This year, she declined. "You're not coming," her mother said, incredulous. "Natalie, this is tradition." "I have other plans, Mom." "What plans could possibly be more important than family? I'm spending it with people I care about." There was a long pause. "Are you seeing someone?" "Yes." "Well, bring him. Your father and I would like to meet him." Natalie imagined Will at her parents' party, judged and dismissed by people who valued pedigree over character. Imagined Emma's sweet enthusiasm crushed by cold formality. "Maybe another time," she said. "We're keeping it low-key this year." "Natalie Margaret Turner, I did not raise you to. I'll call you on Christmas Day, Mom. I love you." She hung up before her mother could continue. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she felt exhilarated and terrified in equal measure. She'd never stood up to her parents like that. Never chosen her own happiness over their expectations. It felt incredible. Christmas Eve, she went to Will's apartment with bags full of presents. Nothing crazy expensive. She'd learned that Will's pride was tender on the subject of money, but thoughtful things. Books for Emma. A good winter jacket for Will that she'd noticed his current one was basically held together with hope and duct tape. Art supplies and games they could all enjoy together. The apartment was decorated with slightly lopsided paper snowflakes Emma had made, and a small tree covered in handmade ornaments. It was the most beautiful Christmas decoration Natalie had ever seen. They made dinner together, roast chicken and vegetables and potatoes that Will taught her how to make crispy. Emma set the table with paper napkins she'd drawn snowmen on. They ate by the light of the tree, and Natalie thought this was what people meant when they talked about holiday magic. After dinner, they opened presents. Emma gave Natalie a painted picture frame with a photo of the three of them at the farmer's market. "So you can remember we're a family," Emma said seriously. Natalie had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry for a minute. Will's gift to her was a beautiful leather-bound journal. Inside the cover, he'd written, "For all the dreams you're going to chase now. Love, W. It's perfect," she said, and kissed him right there in front of Emma, who made exaggerated, grossed-out sounds but was clearly delighted. Emma loved her presents, especially the art supplies. Will held his new jacket like it was made of gold, his eyes suspiciously bright. "This is too much," he said quietly. "It's not enough," Natalie countered. "You both have given me everything." They stayed up late, watching Christmas movies, Emma falling asleep between them on the couch. Natalie held Will's hand and thought about how a year ago she'd been alone in her apartment, working through Christmas Eve because there was nothing else to do. "Stay tonight," Will whispered. "Please." She did. Will carried Emma to bed, and Natalie helped change her into pajamas, moving around each other with practiced ease. Then they returned to the pull-out couch, holding each other in the dark. "I love you," Will said. "I need you to know that. I love you, Natalie." "I love you too," she said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. "So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared, the kind that means it's real." They made love quietly, carefully, aware of Emma sleeping in the next room. It was tender and sweet and perfect, and afterward, Natalie lay in his arms thinking that she'd never been this happy. "Move in with us," Will said suddenly. Natalie lifted her head to look at him. "What? I know it's crazy. I know this place is tiny and it's not what you're used to. But I want to wake up with you every morning. I want Emma to have you there at breakfast. I want this to be real, permanent." He touched her face gently. "Move in with us, or we could find a new place, something bigger, whatever you want. You'd move, but you've been here since Emma was born." "I'd live anywhere if it meant being with you." Natalie's mind raced. This was fast. They'd only been dating for 2 months. People would think they were crazy. Her parents would lose their minds. Her board of directors would probably have concerns about her decision-making abilities. And she didn't care. "Okay," she said. Okay, let's find a place, something with enough room for all of us. Emma should have her own room, a real one, and you need a space that isn't a pull-out couch and maybe a dog. A dog? Emma wants one. You promised her someday, why not now? Will kissed her, deep and thorough. Are you real? Sometimes I think I imagined you. I'm real, and I'm all in, Will, with you and Emma, whatever that looks like. They stayed awake the rest of the night, planning, talking about neighborhoods and schools and what kind of dog they should get. Making promises and dreaming about the future. When Emma woke up early on Christmas morning and climbed into bed with them, demanding Santa stories, it felt like the start of everything. The next few months were a whirlwind. Finding an apartment in New York that met everyone's needs and wasn't astronomically expensive was challenging, but Natalie's resources helped. They found a place in Brooklyn, a 3-bedroom in a building with a small yard and good schools nearby. It was a compromise between their worlds, nicer than what Will could afford alone, but not the luxury Natalie was used to. It was perfect. Moving in together revealed all the small intimacies of shared life. Natalie learned that Will was a morning person who woke with the sun and made terrible coffee. He learned that she was grumpy before 9 a.m. and had an extensive nighttime skincare routine. Emma learned that she could crawl into bed with them on weekend mornings, and they'd make pancakes together while still in pajamas. They adopted a dog from a shelter, a medium-sized mutt named Biscuit, who was all wagging tail and enthusiasm. Emma was beside herself with joy, and even Natalie, who'd never had a pet, fell in love with the goofy animal. Work was an adjustment. Natalie's team adapted to her new schedule and boundaries, and to her surprise, the company didn't fall apart with her working fewer hours. She promoted her CFO to COO and delegated more responsibilities, trusting the excellent people she'd hired to do their jobs. Will transferred to projects closer to home, and they figured out a schedule that worked around Emma's school. They became a team, coordinating pickups and bedtimes and grocery shopping with the practiced efficiency of actual partners. Emma thrived. She had her own room, which she decorated with Will and Natalie's help. She had stability, 2 adults who loved her completely, and a dog to play with. Her teachers commented on how happy she seemed, how confident. In March, Natalie met Will's friends from work, a group of guys who'd been skeptical about the millionaire girlfriend until they met her and saw how she fit into Will's life. By the end of the evening, they were joking with her like she'd always been part of the crew. In April, Will finally met Natalie's parents. It went about as well as Natalie had expected, which is to say it was awkward and uncomfortable, and her mother made several pointed comments about Will's profession. But he held his own, refusing to be intimidated by their judgment. And when Natalie stood up and said they were leaving, choosing Will over her parents' approval, something shifted in her mother's face. "He makes you happy," her father said at the door, the first genuine thing he'd said all evening. "He does," Natalie confirmed. "Then I suppose that's what matters." It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was a start. In May, Emma's 7th birthday arrived. They threw her a party in their apartment's courtyard, inviting her entire class. Natalie and Will spent the week before making decorations and planning games and baking a cake that was slightly lopsided, but made with love. The party was chaotic and loud, and everything a kid's party should be. When Emma blew out her candles, her wish was barely a whisper, but Natalie heard it. "I wish we could be a real family forever." That night, after Emma was asleep and they'd cleaned up the party debris, Will pulled Natalie onto the couch. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous," she teased, but her heart was suddenly racing. He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Emma wishes we were a real family, but the thing is, we already are. You've been more of a mother to her in the past 6 months than Sarah ever was. You're my partner in every way that matters. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone." "Will, let me finish." He took a breath. "I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to make sure this was what you wanted before I did this properly." but Natalie Turner, would you maybe, possibly, consider marrying me, officially becoming Emma's mom, making this permanent?" Tears were streaming down Natalie's face. "You don't have to ask me twice. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes, yes, absolutely yes." He kissed her, and they stayed tangled together on the couch for a long time, making plans and promises. Eventually, Natalie pulled back. "We should tell Emma," she said. "Now, it's midnight. She's probably still awake. You know she never actually sleeps after parties." Sure enough, when they knocked softly on Emma's door, she called out that she was awake. They sat on her bed, Biscuit jumping up to join them. "Hey, kiddo," Will said. "We wanted to talk to you about something." Emma sat up, suddenly serious. "Am I in trouble?" "No, nothing like that." He glanced at Natalie, who nodded encouragingly. "You know how you wished we could be a real family forever?" "Yeah." "Well, Natalie and I were thinking, how would you feel if we got married? If Natalie officially became your mom?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Like really, really?" "Really, really," Natalie confirmed. "If that's okay with you, you're the most important person in this decision." Emma launched herself at Natalie, hugging her so tight it almost hurt. "Yes, yes, yes, yes. Can I call you Mom?" Natalie's voice broke. "I would love that more than anything." They stayed in Emma's room for another hour, talking about wedding plans and what it meant to be a family. Emma wanted to be a flower girl. She wanted Biscuit to be in the wedding, too. She wanted to help pick out Natalie's dress and the cake and everything. When they finally tucked her back in, she was glowing with happiness. "This is the best birthday ever," she mumbled, already half asleep. In the hallway, Will pulled Natalie close. "You're sure about this? Marriage is one thing, but officially adopting Emma is forever. There's no take-backs." "I don't want take-backs. I want forever." She kissed him softly. "I want all of it. The messy mornings and the school plays and the teenager years that are going to be terrifying. I want every moment with you both. Even when Emma becomes a teenager and hates us, especially then." They got married in June at a small ceremony in Central Park. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself, with Biscuit on a leash covered in flowers. Natalie wore a simple white dress, and Will wore a suit that fit him perfectly, and they both cried during their vows. "You taught me what matters," Natalie said, looking at Will through tears. "You showed me that success isn't about money or power. It's about love and connection and choosing to show up every day for the people who matter. You and Emma are my everything." "You saved us," Will said. "When you came into our lives, we were doing okay. We were surviving, but you made us better. You made me better. You chose us every single day, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that choice right." Emma stood between them, holding both their hands, beaming at everyone. The adoption papers were finalized in August. Natalie legally became Emma's mother, and the day they went to court, Emma wore her fanciest dress and couldn't stop smiling. "I have 2 parents now," she told the judge seriously. "And a dog, and we're a real family." "You certainly are," the judge agreed, signing the final papers. That night they celebrated with ice cream and movies, and Emma falling asleep between them on the couch, like she had so many times before. But this time it was official. Legal, permanent, no regrets. Will whispered over Emma's sleeping head. "Not a single one," Natalie said. "This is everything I never knew I wanted." Life settled into a beautiful routine. Natalie continued running her company, but with different priorities. She was home for dinner most nights. She never missed school events. When Emma got sick, she worked from home. When Will's work was stressful, she made sure he had time to decompress. They took a family vacation to the beach in September, Emma's first time seeing the ocean. Watching her daughter play in the waves, building sandcastles with Will, Natalie thought about how far she'd come from that day when her grocery bag split open. She'd been living half a life then, successful but alone, achieving goals that meant nothing. Now she had everything messy, complicated, real everything. In October, they returned to that grocery store, the site of their first meeting. It was a Saturday, and they were doing their weekly shopping together. Emma rode in the cart like she was still a little kid, making Will and Natalie laugh. "Remember when we met here?" Emma asked. "When Mom dropped all her groceries?" "I remember," Natalie said, squeezing Will's hand. "Best day of my life." "Mine too," he said, "even if you did try to carry everything yourself. I was independent. You were stubborn. Still am." "I know," he said, and kissed her right there in the produce section. "I love that about you." Emma made gagging noises but was clearly pleased. They finished their shopping and walked home together, a family of 3 plus 1 enthusiastic dog. The fall air was crisp and perfect, the city alive around them. Natalie carried one bag, Will carried two, and Emma held the bag with the bread, which she insisted was an important responsibility. That night, after Emma was in bed and they'd cleaned up from dinner, Natalie and Will stood at their living room windows, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. "Happy?" he asked, arms wrapped around her from behind. "Incredibly," she said. "You, more than I ever thought possible." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for stopping at that grocery store, for splitting that bag open, for letting us into your life. Thank you for helping me carry my groceries, for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else, for loving me. Always," he promised. "Forever." And he kept that promise. Through Emma's teenage years, which were indeed sometimes terrifying but mostly wonderful, through career changes and new challenges and all the small moments that make up a life, through Emma graduating high school, then college, then starting her own family, through the birth of their son, 2 years after they got married, a surprise pregnancy that sent them into joyful chaos, while turning the third bedroom into a nursery while Emma helped paint clouds on the ceiling. Through opening a second business together, combining Natalie's business acumen with Will's construction knowledge to flip and renovate old buildings into affordable housing, making a difference while making a living. Through moving to a bigger house when Emma was 12, one with a real yard and space for everyone. Through holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesdays that were extraordinary simply because they were together. Through everything, they chose each other. Every single day, they chose love over fear, connection over isolation, family over everything else. Years later, when Emma got married, she asked both her parents to walk her down the aisle. Natalie wore a blue dress and cried through the entire ceremony, holding Will's hand while their daughter started her own family. At the reception, Emma made a speech. "When I was 6 years old, my dad helped a lady carry her groceries. I thought he was just being nice, which he was. But it turned out to be so much more than that. That lady became my mom, my friend, my everything. She taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up. It's about choosing love every day. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for choosing each other, and for choosing me." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, Natalie and Will danced together, moving slowly to the music. Their son, now a teenager, was probably hiding somewhere with the other kids, avoiding the sappy adult stuff. Emma was radiant in her wedding dress, dancing with her new husband. "We did good," Will said softly. "We really did," Natalie agreed. "How did we get so lucky? You had a poorly made grocery bag. I was in the right place at the right time. Emma needed a mom. You needed a family. Sometimes the universe just works out." "Is that what you think? The universe?" "I think I saw a beautiful woman who needed help, and I got a lot more than I bargained for." He pulled her closer. "I love you, Natalie Edwards." "I love you too," she said. "Thank you for carrying my groceries." "Anytime," he promised, "for the rest of our lives," and he meant it. Through everything that came after grandchildren and retirement and growing old together, they kept that promise. They carried each other's burdens, shared each other's joys, and built a life that was richer than any amount of money could buy. Because Natalie had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or success. It was measured in love, in family, in the small moments that made up a life. In a little girl who'd called her mom, in a man who'd seen her when she was invisible. In a dog named Biscuit, who somehow lived to be 15 years old. In a son who grew up kind and strong like his father. In grandchildren who asked for stories about how Grandma and Grandpa met. And it all started with a split grocery bag on a Manhattan sidewalk and a kind man who stopped to help a stranger. The best things in life, Natalie learned, often begin in the most unexpected ways. You just have to be open to them. You have to let people in. You have to be willing to ask for help and accept it when it's offered. You have to be brave enough to choose love, even when it's terrifying. Even when it means changing everything about how you live. Even when it means admitting that maybe you've been doing it all wrong. Because in the end, love is the only thing that really matters. Not money or status or achievement. Just love in all its messy, complicated, beautiful glory. And Natalie Turner, Millionaire CEO turned wife and mother and partner and friend, wouldn't have changed a single thing about how her story unfolded. Every moment led her to exactly where she was meant to be, standing in her kitchen on a Sunday morning, while making terrible coffee while Emma visited with the grandkids, their sons stopping by for lunch. Biscuit's successor, a puppy named Muffin, barking at the mailman. This was her real success. Her true achievement. Her greatest accomplishment. This was everything.